Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kurtiwada. In this video, we will learn about uid hook which is given by React. So here, this is a very rare hook which we will be using in our application. But when we can use this uid hook and what is the purpose of it, we'll see that. So let me go into the another slide. Here, the use case of uid is generating a unique ID, and when we have to generate this, there are three cases where we have to generate this. First case is we have to generate the unique ID for all the related elements. For example, you have a label and you have an input element, and then if you want to relate these two elements, then you can create the UID. And the second thing is generate the UID for accessibility related elements. For example, you can have accessibility like whenever you are going to the particular element, it will try to read the content, whatever it has, and it is mainly used for visually handicapped or accessibility problem, whoever have that. For that type of applications, we'll be using this unique ID. And also we can use this UID for avoiding the duplication of IDs whenever you are using the component multiple times. Whenever we use the same component multiple times and there could be a problem with the IDs whatever we are generating. So at that particular time also we can generate the UID. And what are the rules for creating a UID? Always create the UID at the top level of your functional component. And the second thing is this UID should not be created whenever you are looping the elements. For example, whenever we want to use a key, then you should not generate this UID. Why? Because UID is used only for relating the element, not for the looping purpose. Why? Because if you loop the IDs which are not unique and which always changes, then the virtual DOM will not work as expected. So that is the reason UID is not recommended to generate on the keys of a particular looping conditions. So let me go into the Visual Studio Code and I'll show you how exactly we can use this UID. So now I'm just creating a input element. For example, I have an input element, and for this input element I have something like type is equal to text, and let me go with a area hyphen described by is equal to, so I can give any of the ID whatever it is related to. For example, whenever I want to describe this element with another element, for example, I have a paragraph where I am saying enter only text. So now I want to relate this described by with my paragraph. So how I can give is I can just go here and I can give some ID. So what should be the ID? The ID should be the parent ID. So now I can give a hard coded value. For example, only text is my hard coded value. Now I can give this only text here as well. So these both are related to each other. So let me give this as small b. So now save this. Now this element will be described by this paragraph whenever you are using an accessibility tools. So in this case, it will be accessible where the ID is a common part. For now, it is good. Why? Because we have only input element and a paragraph. And let me go here, just inspect this, and if you see this field described by, it is having only text. So you have this described by property and it is having only text, which is the ID. So whenever you are using an external tools, then you can just link these two elements and you can listen what we wrote inside this paragraph. And let me go into the console. Let's see. So there is a problem. Area described by, it is capital letter, it is expecting to give a small letter, so let me give the small b and save this. Now let me refresh. So no error. So let me go into the elements, and you can see described by, and that described by is equivalent to this paragraph. So this is one relation which we can give. But let me do one thing. Let me make this input element and password as a separate component. That means I want to reuse this component. Let me create input.js and rfce the snippet for creating a functional component, and let me remove this and paste here. Let me format this. Now what I want to do, I want to use this input in my app. So let me use input and import this. Save this and go here, save this. Let me go here and just refresh. It looks the same way. Now if you see, the described by is equivalent to this paragraph. Now what I'll do is I have one more input again. So let me go here. You have two inputs where both has a described by the same ID. That means same value. Here also it is same and here also it is same. but it should not be always duplicated because that should be an unique part. Otherwise, your screen reader or the accessibility tools will not work as expected. So that's why what we have to do is we have to generate a unique ID. This generation of unique ID can be done in two ways. One is by sending the props, but sending the props is always a big deal. Why? Because just for the accessibility purpose, sending a prop is not always recommended. We have to send every time whenever we are trying to use. Then also there may be a chance where the props can also be duplicated. So that's why what we'll do is we'll use a hook called as uid. So now what I'll do, I'll generate it on the top level. Const text uid is equal to, now we can make it as useId console this console.log of text uid and save this. Now go here and just go to the console. It has generated some value, something like this, R0, R1, R2, R3. So whenever it is trying to generate or rerun your application or a component, then it will be generating one UID. So let me clear this off and inspect this. You can see the ID will be UID, and that UID you can use on the top of described by and also on the top of paragraph. So let me save this. Now let me go to the console. It has generated R3 and R3 two times. So let me consider only one time because it is in a strict mode. So let me go here and inspect this. So if you see, there is an R1 which is generated and a PR1. So always it is trying to generate a unique ID. So like this, you can use your unique ID for relating a accessibility attributes. So that way we can use this UID. If you want to use the UID for number of elements in a same component, then you can just add a suffix. So how we can use this suffix? I can just add the suffix by using this text and let me add hyphen. Let me use first name, something like this, and let me make it as dynamic value. So we are adding your ID with this first name. So this will be my ID. Let me copy this and put it over here so that this will be related to the first name, but the text ID will be generated dynamic, and hence this value will always be a unique value. And you can have n number of input elements and n number of paragraphs where it always have a suffix. Whenever we use this input element, automatically you will be generating a new ID and the first name will be linked up over here. So this is for accessibility attributes. Even you can do in other way. For example, I have one more div, and inside this div I have an input field where my input field has a checkbox, that is nothing but type checkbox. Now let me go and give for attribute, HTML for attribute. So for attribute should be inside a label. So let me go into the label and let me give for attribute, that is HTML for. In React we have to give HTML for. Whenever we are using a JavaScript or Angular, you can give for attribute directly, but whenever you are trying to use in React, you have to use an attribute called as HTML for. So now this HTML for should receive an ID. So the ID can be a static ID or dynamic ID. Now let me give the static ID. For example, checkbox ID, and let me give the ID is equal to the same one like checkbox ID. Copy this and put it over here. So the label is something like check this box, and you'll be getting a checkbox on the top, and let me put it over here at the bottom and save this. Now go here, you got a checkbox with a label. So now when you click this label, it is working fine because we have given a HTML for attribute. Because of that attribute itself, it is working as expected. So now what I'll do is I'll just remove this HTML for. So now let me save this and go here, just refresh. Now when I click this text, the checkbox is not being checked or unchecked. This is because you didn't give the for attribute. That is how the for attribute will work. So whenever you are using a label, if you want to give a for attribute, you can give this, and you have to map to any of the element or the ID. Let me copy this and put it over here, save this. Now you can see when I click this, it is checked. When I click this, see here, when I click the second one, the first one is getting enabled and disabled. So the checkmark is enabled and the checkmark is disabled. But we are clicking on the second element. This is because you have both the same IDs. For example, the first one also have the same ID, that is a static ID, and the second one also have the same ID. This is the problem which it will be created whenever you are using a same component multiple times with the same ID. So we have to generate a unique ID for this. So already I have generated a unique ID, and that unique unique ID I'll try to use on this ID. So let me go here and add the ID hyphen, and this is checkbox ID, and let me copy the same and put it over here with interpolation and save this. Now this ID will always be unique. So let me save this, go back, and you can see the ID. Let me select this ID, and if you see the div, you have an ID that is R1 checkbox, and this is having a R1 checkbox related for attribute. In the same way, you have something called as area described by, and that ID is related to this paragraph. And again, the checkbox here you can see R3, and that is related to this checkbox. So now if I click this checkbox, only the second checkbox is enabled. When I click this, only the first checkbox is enabled. That means the IDs are unique for each and every checkbox. This is how it will be helpful whenever you want to generate an unique ID for reusable components. So this helps us a lot how we can manage our for attributes. And one more thing I want to mention over here is whenever you give HTML for in your React application, the label inside the elements of your browser will only receive for attribute, so it will not show HTML for. Only this is for React purpose. For example, if you give a for attribute, it will receive that for attribute, but if you go into the console, you are getting some set of errors. That means invalid DOM property. Whenever you are using this for attribute in other frameworks, it works, but only in React you have to use HTML for instead of for attribute directly. So the same way how we are using a class name instead of class, we have to map your for attribute with HTML for. That's how your input element will work, and you can generate a unique ID by using useId hook. So that's how you can use your useId hook in React. And that's it for this video. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.